Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Concrete Cowboy. Concrete Cowboy is a Western drama set in modern-day Philadelphia and tells the story of a young teenage delinquent named Cole who's played by Caleb McLaughlin. He's currently attending school in Detroit, but he's causing a lot of problems at the school he's at, usually in the form of starting up fights with other kids at school, and it gets serious enough to a point that he risks being expelled from the school that he's attending. So his mother decides that she's going to send him over to his father in Philadelphia to sort of teach him a lesson of sorts and how to learn proper good behavior for a boy his age. Cole ends up getting unceremoniously dunked at his dad's doorstep, but he doesn't answer because he's not home. But with the help of a neighbor, he walks down the street and manages to find him at the place where he spends the most time at in the movie, which is at Fletcher Street Stables, which is where most of the rest of the movie takes place as well. From there, the rest of the movie's story takes off. It's more or less just your typical coming-of-age story in which a troubled youth has to learn from a father figure in order to become a better person in their life overall. And it's taken really literally in this case, because it's not just the fact that he's lacking a father figure in his life, he also has to learn from his father who was absent for most of his life and has to try and build a connection with him at the same time. I don't know why it took me this long to say it, but Harp is very much an urban cowboy in every sense of the term. He's always going around wearing cowboy-themed clothing, especially the cowboy hat. He wears that in pretty near every scene he's in. He looks after his own horses, he manages his own stables. Pretty much any sort of cliche that you can think of being associated with a cowboy, Harp is that 100%. And it's not just Harp, of course, either. It's all the other characters that Harp spends time with as well, which at the time I didn't realize this when watching until I got to the end credits, but it turns out that a lot of the cast in this movie, a good chunk of them anyway, are performed by real-life riders from the Fletcher Street Stables. If you're not familiar with Fletcher Street, by the way, it's basically a non-profit riding club that promotes inner-city horsemanship and ownership of horses in the inner city of Philadelphia. And I just found the overall concept of this movie to be really unique in that respect. Not just the fact that it's a Western-themed movie, and we don't get much of those these days, but also the fact that it's such a unique topic to begin with. The fact that it's based on black culture and it combines it with cowboys in a modern-day setting. I never thought I'd see that put together in a movie, much less in real life. And I really liked how much personality all the other characters brought to this movie on top of its themes. It just felt like they all had a unique backstory and personality, and they all had something to offer here and there to the movie, on top of the main characters of the story, of course. Caleb McLaughlin does a fantastic job in the role of Cole. He starts off in the movie being very angry at the world and self-centered, just doesn't care much about anything, and then you get to see his father play a more positive role on him as the story goes along, and you get to see his character change as a result of that, especially when he starts spending more time with Boo. Those were some of my favorite scenes in this movie, was just when he was spending time with the horses and how he started to become more sensitive just being around a silent animal that didn't judge him for who he was. Idris Elba, who plays Cole's father Harp in this movie, was also just as great. I love how casual he was in the role of a father and that he didn't really know how to approach being a dad in the first place, understandably so considering how much time had passed between when he was a child and to the point in the movie where he's now an adult. And you wouldn't really expect Harp to be the kind of person to be a role model to Cole in the first place. He lives in complete squalor, his house is just a complete mess, his horse is living with him, he has no food in his refrigerator, just nothing but cans of beer and soda everywhere. I was just like, how is this guy supposed to be a role model to Cole? That and the fact that Harp isn't really keen on giving Cole a second chance if he wants to move towards a life of crime as opposed to learning good behavior at the stables. He's just really cold towards him in the beginning, which honestly is something that I kind of have an issue with. I understand that the two hadn't seen each other in a long time and there might be some sort of gap between the two in terms of personality and just some general indifference between each other, but I would have liked to see the movie sped up the bonding between the two a little bit more. They didn't really start connecting well, I felt, until about halfway through the movie, and that was a great pivotal scene in that movie when it did happen, but I would have liked to see it happen just a little bit faster. About that life of crime thing too, the reason why I bring that up is because Cole is often balancing his time between working at the stables with his father and spending time with his childhood friend Smush, who for some reason he was able to immediately recognize even after 10 years since he last seen him. Smush is a guy who actually used to work at the stables with Harp and even had his own horse named Chuck, though for whatever reason he ended up getting kicked out of the stables. I'm assuming because he was slowly starting to live a life of crime. Technically, I sorta get why Smush was included in this movie. They needed to have some sort of devil on Cole's shoulder trying to pull him the certain direction that was going the complete opposite of Harp wanted him to, but I just didn't feel that he was very well developed. Whenever Cole is spending time with him, it's usually at a house party or driving around smoking a joint. They're not really doing anything criminally serious until towards the end of the movie, and by that point in the movie, it just lands completely flat. I feel like the filmmakers were trying to go somewhere with Smush in this movie in the fact that he used to work at the stables and he actually has a concrete goal for the future, but again, it just didn't really land for me. I also wasn't really a fan of the cop in this movie. I'm pretty sure he was supposed to be the antagonist, but he flip-flops so much that I wasn't really able to tell by the end of the story. The cop is another guy who used to work with Harp at his stables, and he eventually leaves that life behind so that he can go and be a police officer and serve his community in what he views as a more meaningful way, and he's constantly bringing up the issue of a dead horse that's rotting in the background, and we never see this dead horse. I kept wondering when the movie was going to show it to us, and apparently it's a big issue that the community has, because by the end of the movie, everyone is like going crazy over it. And I was just like, where's the dead horse? Anyway, I just felt that the cop flip-flopped too much in terms of personality and allegiance. In one scene, he might be friends with Harp, and then in the next, he's his enemy and he's doing something that he's completely opposed to. I just felt that they didn't know what to do with that character. Something else I noticed in this movie before I finished this review, I noticed a motif concerning the connection between cowboys and societal change. Back in the day when Western movies were all the rage and extremely popular, sort of how like superhero movies are today, there was always talk about how cowboys were going from one place to another and trying to carry out their lifestyle while always on the run from the law that was slowly catching up on them. And there would come a time when society and technology would evolve to a point that the cowboy lifestyle would just become irrelevant and would no longer exist. And it does exist today in some capacity, but it's obviously nothing like how it used to be. And I like how the movie makes that connection in a modern day setting. We see all sorts of inner city development going on in the downtown areas of Philadelphia, and all the cowboys that are in Fletcher Street trying to maintain their lifestyle despite the city slowly encroaching in their territory and slowly pushing them out. And the fact that all these cowboys came from multiple parts of the country and just convened in this one spot in Fletcher Street, Philadelphia to carry out the lifestyle that they loved together in their community that they chose to live in, I just loved how much history there was behind the group, as well as the personality of the characters like I already said. It just made them that much more relatable for me. Overall, Concrete Cowboy is a very solid Western drama. I was initially more focused on the relationship between Cole and Harp, understandably so considering they're the lead characters, but as the story went along, I just found myself more enamored with the movie's setting and wanted to see way more of it. If you're in the mood for a Western and you want to see one set in a modern day setting that's completely different from what you're used to, especially one that has such strong black cultural themes attached to it, you gotta check out this movie. While I found the father-son dynamic in this movie to be slow in the beginning, I was completely invested in it by the end, and the social themes and messages that are present throughout just added icing on the cake for me. Anyways guys, that's gonna wrap up my review of Concrete Cowboy. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the Dutch romantic comedy, Just Say Yes. Bye bye!